What came first, the chicken or the egg? The spliff in my hand or the thoughts in my head? My first line or the internal rhyme telling me, it's just one time, you'll be fine.
Taran was a great guy. He was just so full of character. People have described him, his friends described him as being the best friend you could ever have. And he was just a great son, a great brother. He always had a hug for us, and he loved his younger siblings, and they adored him back in return. On that day, he wanted to meet a group of friends, and he said they were going to the park to have a water fight. Gave me a big hug and said, "I love you, Mum," and that was the last thing that he said to me. Taran had taken ecstasy. He had become unwell, and it appeared that he'd overheated and was suffering from heat exhaustion. And on the way to hospital, Taran had a cardiac arrest in the ambulance. He was beyond resuscitation at that point.
My son Dan died when he was 16 taking MDMA, and I started a drug education charity, the Daniel Spargo Mabs Foundation, to make sure that other young people were better armed than Dan had been to face those choices safely. Richmond is perceived as this leafy, affluent borough, but drug use has always gravitated towards people with money, because people with money can buy drugs, but also the reasons for using drugs, especially for young people, are common across any demographic.
When I was a teenager, I felt invincible. I didn't think of the consequences ever about anything really. But when you get to my age, you could still be living with repercussions of these decisions that you're making, which I unfortunately am.
We know that adolescent period is really crucial for brain development. And so young people who start using substances during that time are more likely to become addicted. It can impact on their mental health. It can impact on how well they engage in school, how well they do educationally, their relationships with their family and friends.
After a long time of smoking weed, I've started to feel more anxious. I've started to be a little more scared when I go outside. I've started to feel like when I get stressed, I'll be like, oh, I wish I had some weed right now. My memory is pretty terrible now. In school, I'm struggling quite a lot to remember stuff that I've learned not even that long ago. So revisions can be quite hard for my exams.
How do I say no when it looks so fun? How do I tell my dad and my mum? So much anticipation of what's to come. But oh well, like they say, I guess it's only one.
So there are a lot of reasons why young people would misuse substances. Partly it's experimentation and having a different experience of yourself. Young people are trying to, learn who they are and test their boundaries. It can make you feel part of a shared experience. But also, I guess sometimes you're going to be pressurised by peers to take something in a group when you don't want to.
Substance misuse is a big concern for all schools in Richmond. It's very easy for dealers and to offer opportunities for students to sample these things at quite a young age, which is incredibly worrying for us.
We know that when Taran bought ecstasy the day that he died, that he bought it from Snapchat, and it most likely from somebody that he didn't know at all. It's
pretty easy to get drugs nowadays. There's plenty of people on Snapchat. It's big, it's adults who's selling drugs to kids. It's people in your school. You've got friends. It's just as simple as texting someone and going and picking it up. Sometimes they even come to you. The drugs that are available are extremely cheap. Cheaper than cigarettes, cheaper than alcohol, cheaper than Kentucky Fried Chicken probably. They'll show you what it looks like. They'll entice you cheap prices, come now. It's definitely aimed at young people. The way it's kind of all done, especially the names of the strains are fun kind of. It's like rainbow spice and stuff like that.
I searched up Mean Girls on Temu because I wanted to buy some Mean Girls merch, and only one thing came up, and I thought it was a pencil case. I was like, let's have a look. But it wasn't a pencil case, it was a drug bag.
We have families where they purchase vapes for their children under this guise of, well, that's better than something else.
I see vaping around me everywhere. I see it in the bathroom at schools. I just see it like when I'm walking up and down the streets, and it feels really overwhelming. Like I can't breathe without kind of someone just jamming vaping into my face.
I think that similarly with the edibles and the gummies, there are families who have them, and the problem with the children is that they'll eat the whole packet.
Some of our parents may enable their children by buying alcohol for those who are underage. We're not seeing alcohol in school, but what we see is the outcomes of increasing risk-taking behaviour at the weekend, at parties.
I think it's also important for parents to just have a bit of knowledge themselves about the risks around substance misuse, so that they know kind of what their children are potentially being exposed to.
It's always support first, isn't it? And we're not in the business of criminalising young people, but our main aim is to keep them safe.
And I don't know whether it's because I don't feel clever or talented or successful or grounded. And this is something I really have found with the things I have done. Was it to cope? Or was it for fun? Or do they go hand in hand and start a cycle? Because for some people it's a choice of survival that can easily spiral, but for many, it's not rooted as deep. It's the sense of adventure most teenagers seek.
I'm sure there are things that we could have done differently. I wish we had talked more about drugs. We didn't know that he had got to the point where he would take something stronger than cannabis.
We thought we were lucky to have a kid that wasn't getting into those sort of issues. So we'd never had a conversation with him around those things because we thought we didn't have to. I mean, he was found dead in bed in the morning. Unbeknownst to us, he had been using substances. His internet research was looked into, that he had been purchasing stuff for a few months, and we were completely unaware of this.
It's a difficult balance for parents to find, and especially through those teenage years when they do need to be gaining more independence, and it's important that we do loosen the reins, but it's also important that we hold on to them and retain the right, as it were, to pull them back in if we don't feel they're safe. That's always got to be the focus, is their safety. And knowing that there are boundaries, knowing that there are values, what is and isn't okay, those things are really protective for young people.
I think when an old person dies, you're sad, but you don't think too much about their future. But when your child dies, you're forever thinking about their future, what they have lost. Not so much what we have lost. You think about them going off to university. You imagine their future life with partners, marriage, children, careers, and you think of all the things that they're missing out on. And that's the hardest bit.
I don't want to tell parents how to parent, and I know there's lots of different approaches. I think communication is absolutely key. Having a solid, open, communicative relationship with your teenagers. You know, making talks about drugs, everyday chat. It doesn't have to be something that you sit down at the table and decide, we're going to have that chat. You can talk about it at breakfast. And it opens up those conversations. They can teach us as much as we can teach them.
Young people change like the seasons, and all we can do is walk with them through it. Give them a space to talk with no judgment to it, and always be a listening ear. But remember, some people are saying more than the words you can hear.